Hello folks, I'm John Myrie and welcome to the Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. On this week's show we have reports and tips for you from Ken Milender down at Hayward Bait and Bottle. And then we talk musky fishing with musky pro and pro angler Pete Maina. Lots to cover on this week's show, all coming up right after these messages.
The fishing opener has come and gone. If you fish from an old boat, from shore, or didn't go out at all, we can help. Hayward Power Sports has an awesome selection of new Lund boats, built by fishermen for fishermen for the last 75 years, and no boat retains their value better. Or check out a Tracker, America's #1 selling aluminum fishing boat. Whatever brand you choose, they'll be powered by Mercury Outboards, rigged and ready. Don't miss another day of fishing. See us at Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
The Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau in Sawyer County, Wisconsin welcomes you to our Northwoods hometown. No matter the season, no matter the activity, you'll always be surrounded by our great outdoors. What more could you ask for in a vacation destination? Woods, waters, world-class events. Contact us for information on lodging, dining, attractions, events, trail conditions, and more. Order your free vacation guide and start planning your getaway today. Visit us at haywardlakes.com or call 1-800-724-2992.
Riding along in my automobile.
Bumping into things unexpectedly? Make your first choice for collision repair. Ernie's Auto Body, featuring the most advanced collision repair facility in Northwest Wisconsin. With a state-of-the-art spray bake down draft paint booth for that better-than-new finish, laser technology for precision frame alignment, loaner cars available, computerized estimates, written guarantees, and documented unmatched customer service. The clear choice is Ernie's Auto Body, south of Hayward on Highway 63 and Nursery Road, where quality is no accident.
Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering welcomes you to stop by for their great lunch menu. And while you're there, Lynn's also has a great selection of custom cut meats and sausages, as well as many varieties of snack sticks, jerky, fresh cheese curds, and much more. Lynn's is open Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5:30 and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering in Hayward.
Today, anglers fish longer. Today, anglers fish harder. Today, anglers rely more than ever on their electronics. It all comes down to catching more fish, and today, anglers rely on Amped Outdoors lithium batteries, period. Visit ampedoutdoors.com today to power your outdoor experience.
We're down Hayward Bait and Bottle talking to Ken Milender today, and Ken, we had a massive cold front come through, and that kind of drove what I saw as a guide out there. It drove a lot of the panfish out of the shallows, but they went to that first weed bunch.
I think they went and buried themselves in the cabbage patches, I think.
Yeah, in cabbage and milfoil, and they were in the weeds, and they're still in the weeds. And as we're recording this, if it warms up, they'll come back out, and I think they'll make another run shallow again.
Yeah, they'll start suspending at the tops of the weeds and then eventually make it to shore. Some lakes, they probably already started to spawn, but I think that for a lot of the bigger lakes, the spawns. Yeah,
and a lot of the fish got eggs in them yet, and fishing's actually been pretty good. The one thing that's kind of up and down, it seems like, and for me, it's been anyhow, is the walleye fishing. I mean, we're getting fish, but it's not gangbusters.
No, I was on Long Lake yesterday, and there was a lot of walleyes, right on the weed line, anywhere from 10 to 13 feet. But they wouldn't react to any baits or anything.
Yeah, it's kind of strange what's going on there. Pike fishing's been really good. Went down here at the shop. You've been in here. What are you getting for reports as far as what are people fishing for?
A variety. A lot of guys are bobber fishing for walleyes and not having a great success because they're fishing history. And, it seems like the walleyes ain't out deep yet on a lot of the lakes.
You can't fish memories. I mean, you'll lose every time if you fish memories. You want to kind of remember spots and things that worked, but don't lock in on one thing that worked last year, a year before, and try it because it probably won't work for you.
Most of the time, it's water temp and weed growth. Every parts of the lake kind of bloom a little bit different each year, and walleyes will migrate. For instance, on Lake of the Woods. Walleyes, they used to tag them with these little green tags with numbers on them. You send the tag into the DNR, and walleyes have migrated, 70, 80 miles from the Rainy River up to the islands.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't think they moved that far. I knew they do in the rivers like the Mississippi River and stuff, but, they are migratory fish, more so probably than a lot of other fish are, I think.
Yeah, even the smallmouth and bass, you'll see them cruising, and you go to try to find them same areas that had a lot of fish in it, a couple of days earlier, and they're in a different part of the lake the next day.
I've seen a lot of people out, Chippewa flowage, there's been a bunch of people pan fishing. I think when you get to this time of the second, third week of May, I think there's still people fishing walleyes, but a lot of them are going after panfish, and the bluegill fishing's been actually pretty good. So is the crappie fishing. Yeah,
largemouth is doing pretty good yet in the shallows. There's a lot of them. A lot of the lakes they've already spawned out. Like on the Treeland Challenge, there was a lot of largemouth caught on the Chippewa flowage.
Let's talk a little bit about bass fishing. You kind of touched on that a little bit. What's going on as far as the smallmouth fishing, for instance?
All depends upon water temp. Well, over the weekend, Noah Glito and I fished a tournament on Long Lake, and we had a real struggle, but we still ended up in first place. But the smallies, you could see them, but they just wouldn't react. We went to really small baits, 2-inch tubes, marabou jigs, and other baits, and they just wouldn't do anything with them.
And they were going, I was on the flowage, and they were going gangbusters before that cold front came in for me. I was catching them like crazy. So, and a lot of more up shallow, but I think that cold front, that was a major change. Water temperature went down several degrees.
Yeah, we had 57, 58 degrees, and smallies like sun in the spring, especially. Even the largemouth, they'll go, in a foot of water, but they need sun with stable barometric pressure.
Northern pike fishing has been really good for me. What do you hear in the start here?
Yeah, any type of reaction baits. I tried to see if I could get a reaction bait with the rattle trap, and I caught so many northerns. I says, I'm done with that. I don't want to lose any more baits.
And the simplest bait for northern pike for the week was a simple beetle spin. We call it a beetle spin, but it's an overhead clip-on spinner on a 1/4-ounce jig with a white twister tail.
Yeah, any type of spinner bait works really good this time of year. And then the chatterbaits work good, too.
Other things going on, too. I know guys have been out there turkey hunting, and they've been actually doing pretty good on turkeys. I don't know if you heard anything here at the shop. But
for the guys that, come into the shop that are turkey hunters, it's almost like 95% success ratio this year.
A lot of birds out there, a lot of stuff going on, and we've got some stuff coming up too. There'll be big different events here in Hayward, and a lot of interesting things, and we'll start to see bug hatches pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, mosquitoes, them darn things are out already.
Well, I'm referring to mayflies and helgermites, which are dragonflies. The larger fish food items, it makes the fishing a little tougher sometimes.
Yeah, that does make it tough. On Lake of the Woods, I grew up in Warroad, and so when the mayfly hatch was coming up there, the whole city and everybody turns their lights off because it's just so bad.
Yeah, you bet. Well, and down here at the shop, though, you guys are all geared up. You got everything for the musky fishermen and everybody else, the bass fishermen, pan fishermen. Lots of equipment, gear, a lot of new things.
Yeah, we expanded our musky aisle. It ain't completely set. We just waited for products to come in to complete it. But musky season opens on the 24th, and boy, you would think a lot of them would still be, 10 feet less.
It looks like about at least 90 feet of wall with musky lures.
Yeah, a really nice selection.
Well, Ken, I want to thank you for taking the time here with our listeners.
All right, thank you, John.
Well, folks, we need to take a break right now and hear from some of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll be talking musky fishing with pro angler Pete Maina. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop for the Hayward area's largest selection of rods, reels, lures, fishing electronics, boating supplies, and they've now expanded their selection of soft plastic bass and walleye baits. No matter what you're fishing for, at Hayward Bait and Bottle, you'll find everything you'll need for a successful season. And while you're there, in their bottle shop, you'll find a full selection of beer, wine, and liquor, too. And also, don't forget, now they carry Shoremaster docks, lifts, and accessories at Hayward Bait and Bottle. There's no time like the present to explore Hayward, Wisconsin, one of the Midwest's most popular vacation destinations. With crystal clear lakes for water sports and fishing, miles of trails for riding snowmobiles, ATVs, cross-country skiing, hiking, and mountain biking, this area is buzzing with activity year-round. Combined with charming local shops and a variety of Northwoods dining options, Hayward is certain to offer both adventure and relaxation for everyone. Plan your trip today and find everything you need on the Hayward Area Chamber of Commerce website. From events and attractions to local dining, shopping, and lodging, visit haywardareachamber.com and start your next adventure now. Big fish stories come to life at the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. The world's largest shrine to freshwater anglers boasts a 4.5-story tall walk-through musky that's a half a city block long. It's like taking a peek into Granddad's old tackle box with thousands of mounted fish, antique outboard motors, and historical sport fishing artifacts. Stop in and take a chance on our 50-50 cash raffle. You could walk away with a pile of cash. See the big ones that didn't get away at the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, Highways 27 and B in Hayward. Open daily, including Sundays, through October 31st at 9:30 a.m.
Save on a new Can-Am ATV or side-by-side at Hayward Powersports. With summer coming, we're making incredible deals on all of the 2024 models and making space for the new 2025s. Remaining 2024 Can-Am side-by-sides offer rebates up to $3,500 or financing as low as 0.99% for 36 months. The Can-Am Defender is the perfect utility side-by-side that's extra tough on the work site or for the projects around your property. Can-Am Maverick is the high-performance machine that delivers an unrivaled adrenaline surge. Or get the best of work and play with the ultimate crossover, the Can-Am Commander. Maybe you prefer a traditional Can-Am ATV. Pick up a remaining 2024 Can-Am Outlander today with up to $1,500 in rebates, or choose 0.99% financing for 36 months. Take home a Can-Am and make every hunt a success, every trail ride an excitement-filled adventure, and make light work of heavy-duty jobs. Come see Hayward Powersports today, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
Offer subject to credit approval. See dealer for details.
Welcome back to another segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors, and this part of the show is brought to you by the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. For more information on lodging and vacationing here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out their website at haywardlakes.com. Well, folks, you know, musky fishing season is finally open now, and on this week's show, we're talking to pro angler and musky pro Pete Maina about musky fishing. Pete, musky season is here. You got any great tips for people? What do you think it's going to be like this year?
Well, the same as every year, John. Some days are going to be really good. Some days are going to be really bad, and you're going to have some in-between days.
Well, you know, and the line of thought always was that the big muskies don't eat after spawn. Most of these fish are the big ones are going to be post-spawn, and the general theory is that they don't eat, they don't recover, but they do eat, right?
Oh, they definitely eat, yeah. Yeah, they still got to make a living. Right during the spawn. Of course, that's all arguable. I think they're tougher, but yeah. When they get done, you know, I'm sure they're hungry. It's a stressful process, and yeah, they absolutely do eat. Where you're going to find them, generally, one thing about the spring you can be pretty sure of is shallow. Not necessarily shallow in actual depth, though. But if they are out in open water, which they will be in a lot of cases by the time things are open, they're generally going to be in the shallower ranges this time of the year until the water gets hot.
Yeah, they stay up in that upper water column. I mean, that's where the warmest water is, and that's where they want to be, to recuperate from the spawn and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I've caught fish, this time of year, I guess, basically in as much as 100 feet of water, but generally, in a lot of cases, it's the top 12, 15 feet that I'm targeting. You know, you find them generally outside of the areas they're spawning, or can they be mostly anywhere out there in that? Well, that's always where I start, and every lake is a little different. You know, the thing is about muskies, and I guess any fish, on a slow cruise, they can cover a lot of ground pretty quickly. So I think if fish have a particular place they're going to go, you know, they don't have to wait around in the spawning areas for really any length of time. And they cruise effortlessly at a couple miles an hour. So if they want to go somewhere, they go and they're gone if something else is going on. But I always suggest starting near good spawning water, up in it still, and then the deep water basins next door, and of course any structural elements next door. The one thing about spring too, you can find them just about anywhere. There's rocks and wood, and we always talk about weeds, especially in our area. That's kind of the main structure element, but any shorelines, any structures leading out of, adjacent to good spawning areas are going to be my prime targets first. And then you just kind of work it down from there. If nothing's working, you're not even seeing any, you just got to start going through that process of looking around. That open water is something I'll go to pretty quickly. out around and near the spawning areas if nothing else is working on more traditional shallow structures. But then you just start moving around the lake, always kind of mentally checking off options. Obviously, wind's a factor. Sometimes they want to be out of the wind. They don't always want to be in the wind. That's one fallacy. Fishing the windy side of structure and windy shorelines in a lot of cases is a good plan. But, you don't just go out there and stick with that all day unless you found the pattern of that's where you're starting to find fish that day.
I know trolling can be effective out there when they move that open water.
Oh, absolutely. Trolling's a good method, especially depending on the body of water, I guess, to some degree. If you've got a lot of fairly flat area, all the same, kind of, bowl lakes, we commonly call them, not a whole lot of structure. Those types of lakes, you're probably technically better off trolling than casting because you're just covering so much more water, and you can check different depths quickly. So, trolling is most efficient, but for those who like to cast, you can still cast in open water as well and be effective.
Well, and I'm sure you've seen this too. You get outside of an area, there's a spawning bay that they go into. If you find a point that has some really nice deep weeds in 16, 17, 18 feet, that a lot of times they'll be holding around there. They don't necessarily always go out in the middle. If they got that depth they want and they're covered, they'll sometimes hang around there after spawning a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one real smart way to pattern fish in the spring, too, with the right type of structure. Anything fairly sharp breaking, and certainly the points you talked about, but where you can kind of check everything. And unless you've got a pattern already, what you do if you've got multiple anglers, you literally have one angler that's throwing out and parallel and different degree angles out into that deep water to check that area too, because in a lot of cases they're suspended on that real deep break or the deeper weeds like you're just talking about, or maybe just adjacent to it. They might be right next to you and, it's 35 feet of water out there, but they're only suspended 10 feet down. And, a guy that's thrown out to open water and set up in the shallows, in a lot of cases is going to do well. And, of course, that if you have success, then that gives you a little bit of a pattern. You find another spot on the lake that looks real similar and try it there.
You find that same patterns hold whether you're dealing with a reservoir or flowage or a natural lake, or is there a considerable difference there?
In a lot of cases, I think it's different. Yeah, I kind of play that more on a lake to lake. Now, if you're lake hopping, you always take your knowledge from the day before and kind of try and apply it there. But I always stress not being stuck in a rut. Yeah. Especially when you get on a new body of water. But I've even seen it, and I'm sure you have, John, where you've literally gone to the same lake the day after you did well, and you come in with a plan that you think is going to work again because it worked the day before, and it just gets totally blown apart. And then you got to put your thinking cap back on and not just do what you did all day of the day before just because that worked. Things can shift. And again, fish can move. I mean, anybody that's seen muskies, especially suspended cruising, that are definitely traveling. Some are hanging around, but some are just travelers.
Well, folks, we need to take yet another break and hear from even more of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll have the second part of that talk we had with Muskie Pro Pete Maina. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hey folks, come on over to Hayward Ace Hardware and check out the area's largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories. We carry top brands like Browning and Sig Sauer, and we have a great selection of the newest and hard-to-find models. We've got a large selection of ammo with more coming in daily. If you need a scope, we carry great brands like Leupold, Hawk, and EOTech, and we'll even mount it and bore-sight it for you too. We even sell suppressors and silencers. And don't forget to check out our Guns of the Week. Huge discounts on a variety of pistols, rifles, and shotguns that change every week. So stop on in to Hayward Ace Hardware, your firearms superstore. Hayward Ace Hardware, Highway 63 North in Hayward, or give us a call at 715-634-8700.
Hayward Animal Hospital is a full-service medical and surgical hospital featuring on-site laboratory, digital and dental x-ray, in-house pharmacy, and online store. Dr. Ostrander has 40 years of experience dealing with illnesses, injuries, surgery, and dentistry. Hayward Animal Hospital offers urgent care appointments and emergency surgery daily. Please call early in the day for these appointments. They open at 8 a.m. Hayward Animal Hospital is located 1 mile east of Hayward on Highway B. Call 715-634-8971.
Hey folks, the Log Cabin Store in Northwoods Beach on Highway K between the Big Lakes has groceries, ice, beer, liquor, and pop, and now has all new tackle and bait supplies. All current antiques and household items are now on sale, and all must go to make room for the sport shop. That's at the Log Cabin Store in Northwoods Beach between the Big Lakes.
If you'd like to have your time fishing be more enjoyable and productive, hiring a fishing guide can be a good investment. Whether it's learning more about fish patterns throughout the year, learning how to use your depth finder to find the best spots and fish, learn how to use that GPS to get the most out of it, or learn better boat control. A day on the water with a guide can really help you to be a better angler, as well as make a day on the lake very enjoyable. To book a guide trip this year or get more information, you can find us on the internet at www.wiscnorthlandoutdoors.com, and then just click on Area Guides.
Welcome back to the last segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. And folks, we're going to jump right back into the second part of that talk we had with Pete Maina. As far as baits and presentations for early in the year, they were always talking about small baits early in the year, but heck, I've got some of my biggest muskies on 9-inch baits right away after opener. And it all depends on the weather and conditions. Any recommendations there for you?
Yeah, I mean, if I could only have a couple of baits, I'd probably have a crankbait and some type of jerk bait, but it literally everything works, and generally the smaller rule is pretty good. You will find, though, certain lake types, there's trends towards bigger things than just certain lakes.
What they're eating in that lake.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the overall size of the forage, but and what they're trained in on. And then with regard to bait size, I generally think those days where your larger baits might work best is when you have real steady weather for that time of the year. You don't have any extremes, so you don't have any major cold front, but you also don't have any major heat up going on. You don't, I would almost rather have a cold front in the spring than a 90-degree day.
Yep.
That throws fish off. That's where I would think a little smaller, a little more in your face, that type of thing on a day like that. But let's just say you've got a gradual warm up. The air temperature is just a few degrees warmer than the water temperature. That's the kind of thing that the fish expect. That's the kind of day where I would expect I might get more aggressive, both in speed and size, and find success.
And you mentioned erratic baits, jerk baits. So you and I both in the same category. We were fishing real erratic baits, jerk baits, big minnow baits and stuff. And we found out that we trigger more strikes with that. A lot of guys want to throw baits that they can just crank in. And that was years ago. It was mostly bucktails or topwater baits. Yeah. And when we started throwing the aggressive stuff, and we're getting these responsive strikes, how aggressive do you want to get with them? I know you taught me a long time ago, you're about ripping your arm out of the socket to rip on a bait sometimes.
Well, this topic goes into there's some things you don't do quite like you used to do.
That's true. That's true.
As crazy as we got as because you could, it does hurt a little bit, but sometimes being really nuts with your presentation. And, it's natural. It's just a common sense thing. If there's a whole bunch of fish out there to eat, the predator is going to take the easy prey, and something that looks wounded, that all just makes sense. If that bait looks like it's a messed up, wounded fish that's vulnerable, they're way more apt to grab that. Well, heck, that's why people have it every year when they're reeling in other types of fish, a musky or a northern pike or something bigger. I've seen big walleyes do it too. They'll attack somebody's fish that they're reeling in because it looks vulnerable. So that's what you want to go for. And it seems like, especially in the spring, if I could only use a couple of baits, they would definitely be, erratic baits that you could make dart side to side. You can stall them. They're neutral. that type of thing where you can keep it in their face a longer time too, and yet still make it look vulnerable. And you just got to try, the pace. Sometimes they really got to have that pause deal. You can make it look real erratic, but your presentations that are actually going to work might be 2 to 3 times slower on a retrieve than, going crazy and, the normal speed you might otherwise have success with. So that's what I mess around with out on the water. I always tell people, if you throw in a bait for 20 minutes or whatever, which you should probably give on an average a try that long, if you've done the exact same retrieve the whole time, you really haven't done anything. You should try different retrieves, different speeds of retrieve with every bait.
Yeah, well, there's basically 2 ways of fishing. You're going to catch a fish. You're going to eat 1 of 2 ways. 1, if they're hungry, they're out there eating. And 2, you're going to get a responsive strike from them. And I've always said that, and I'm sure you're the same way, that time when they're aggressive and they're actually feeding is a very narrow window compared to the other times that you can catch them with a trigger and a responsive strike.
Oh, yeah. In a lot of cases, you've really only got a window or 2 during the day that'll peak where they, they bite it when they see it kind of thing, or when it lands. And other than that, yeah, you're working hard. You're trying to drop it right on their nose, and you're trying to get a reaction strike. And that's what's fun about it, though, in a way. And the times that are off, you could argue it's not fun at all because it's a lot more boring than when the window really opens. But that's when it's fun to try and figure out different baits and different retrieves to try and trigger a strike when nothing else was working.
Should talk a little bit about fish handling real quick, too, because we're getting way more pressure on the muskies out there than we've ever seen. More people out there fishing. People got to start being more careful on how they handle these fish, how many pictures they need, maybe doing just strictly water release on them rather than drag them in the boat, put them on a bump board and all that stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. You really can't stress that enough, John. It's definitely a recycled resource big time these days. These fish get caught, I think, more than they ever have in history with the combination of knowledge, technology, and social media sharing of all of the information. And we've actually seen a downgrade. You and I have talked about this before. I think, unfortunately, somewhat blamable on social media and everybody wanting to display things. I understand all of that as well, but we've seen way more handling because of that. And the whole idea of bringing fish in a boat to find out exactly how long it is, measuring it on the floor of the boat, inside the boat, that's all bad. Anything out of the water, by the way, the pictures are bad, and that's why there's nothing wrong with pictures. I understand that. You've worked hard for this fish, and you want to get a picture, but the release shots are cool. The holding shots are cool as well, but there's really no need to hold them out of the water any longer than 5 seconds. We got a turkey here. On the interview.
Yeah.
Interview with the Maina farm here. But that turkey agrees, though. You got to handle them well, and really be thinking about it also when it gets a little warmer. I know we're talking about spring muskies here, but generally by the time the season opens, we're pushing 70-degree water already. So anytime you've got warmer water, all of the things we talk about with handling are much more important. You really want to minimize it at that point, especially if you're getting up to 75 and basically every degree. I hate the idea of putting a certain temperature on when you need to be careful or you need to stop fishing muskies. It's every degree makes it a little bit worse, and you just got to be careful. And any time you're in those 70-degree ranges, you want to absolutely minimize the time out of the water.
I know, Pete, you got a lot of videos and stuff out there and information where they find that stuff at to follow what you do.
The website's probably the best, PeteMaina.com, and the YouTube channel and everything else I do there, the social media and all of the stuff is right there on PeteMaina.com. So.
Well, Pete, I want to thank you greatly for taking the time with us here.
Yeah, you bet, John. Always fun.
Well, folks, we're about out of time for this week's show. I'd like to remind everyone out there that if you miss a show, go to our website at wnoradio.com. From there, you can link to our podcast site, and the show is also on Spotify and Google Podcasts every week. And also, if you're looking for information on vacationing and lodging here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau website at haywardlakes.com. Thanks for listening, folks. We're out of time, and we'll be back again next week with another interesting show for you.
Listen with me, I'm gonna take you there to our Wisconsin outdoors, our Wisconsin outdoors.
This program has been produced and hosted entirely by Wisconsin Northland Outdoor Communications.